Hi girls, are you ready for chapter 3 and more of The Adventures of Sophie Mouse, a New Friend? So just to recap chapter 1 and 2, we met Sophie, who was Sophie Mouse. We met Lily Mouse, that's Sophie's mother. George Mouse, that's her father. Hattie Frog, that's Sophie's best friend. Winston, Sophie's little brother. And at the end of chapter 2, they made it to Sophie's mom's bakery where they ate some popovers. So now we'll see what happens next. Chapter 3, School Surprise. The next morning, dressed in their best jumper dress and leggings, Sophie hurried to get her backpack ready. She was eager to see her friend she hadn't seen all winter. Plus, she thought, you never know exactly what will happen on the first day of school. Sophie zipped up her backpack. Bye, Dad, Sophie called as she hurried out the door. Wait for me, Winston said. He ran out after her, his shoelaces still untied. Sophie had almost forgotten. Winston was starting school this year. Mrs. Wise, one-room school, Silver Lake Elementary, was for all students ages 6 to 10. Sophie bent down to tie Winston's shoes. Mrs. Wise will want you to learn to tie these yourself, she said firmly. Then, in a gentler voice, she added, come on, I'll show you the fun way to school. Instead of taking the path into Pine Needle Grove, past the bakery, the library, and the post office, Sophie led Winston to a little-known trail. It cut behind the library and ran through a tunnel of honeysuckle branches. The flower buds were just opening. Sophie could hear Winston behind her, taking deep breaths of the scent. The trail came out in the schoolyard. Sophie led Winston up to the front door and inside the pine bough schoolhouse. Sophie, Hattie's voice rang out. Sophie turned and waved. Hattie was standing with her big sister, Liddy, and their friend Ellie the squirrel. Just then, Piper the hummingbird and Zoe the bluebird flew in through the windows. Willie the toad was already sitting at his desk next to Malcolm the mole. And Ben the rabbit and his little brother James entered the room behind Sophie and Winston. Winston knew James from preschool, so they went off to find 2 desks together, a mouse-sized one for Winston and a bigger one for James. Sophie headed over to say hello to Hattie, Liddy, and Ellie, but just then Mrs. Wise, a neatly dressed owl with glasses, that's their teacher, stood up at the front of the room. Class, she said, please take your seats. Sophie hurried to get a maple bark desk by the window so she could see outside. She loved looking out the window, even if Mrs. Wise did catch her daydreaming sometimes. Welcome back to school, said Mrs. Wise when the students were seated. I'm happy to see you all bright-eyed and ready to... Bright-eyed and ready to start another season. Now, I think we're all here. Mrs. Wise counted the students. Oh, we're missing our new student. His family has just moved to Pine Needle Grove. His name is Owen. I know you will all make him feel very welcome." At that moment, the door creaked open. "Here he is now," said Mrs. Wise. "Welcome, Owen." All the students turned their seats and gasped. Ellie and Malcolm both let out little squeaks. Ben's ears stood straight up. Sophie rubbed her eyes, making sure she was seeing this right. Owen was a snake. Chapter 4, First Day Jitters. That must be Owen right there. Sophie glanced at Hattie, who was sitting behind her. Their eyes met. Sophie could tell that Hattie was just as nervous and surprised as she was. A real snake in real life, Sophie thought. She'd never seen one before. She bet none of her classmates had either. "Come in, Owen," Mrs. Wise said to him warmly. "Find a seat." Everyone watched as Owen respectfully took off his brimmed cap. Then he slithered up the center aisle. As he passed up an empty desk next to Sophie's, she breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't want to be rude, but she didn't know if she wanted Owen to sit next to her either. Some of Sophie's ideas about snakes came from books, but most had come from stories, spooky stories that older animals told about poisonous sea snakes or hissing ghost snakes. Surely they couldn't be true, or could they? Owen found a desk in an empty row. Mrs. Wise began the math lesson. Other students took out their notebooks. Sophie got hers out too. Okay, a snake in class, she thought. No big deal, I guess. Then, during quiet reading time, Sophie heard a psst. She looked up. Owen was leaning towards Zoe's desk, which was in front of his. He was trying to get her attention, but Zoe was lost in her book. Owen said, "Psst," a little louder. Zoe didn't hear. Owen tried one more time. "Psst," he said loudly. Startled, Zoe fluttered up and out of her seat, turning to glare at Owen. "Why are you hissing at me?" she demanded. Owen cleared his throat. "Your bookmark is on the floor," he said. His voice was a little raspy, like mine, but gentle. Zoe picked up her bookmark and sat down. "Oh," she said quietly, "thanks." At recess, Owen passed by the swing set and accidentally swatted the swing James was on with the end of his tail. The swing went flying way too high. "Whoa!" James cried out. "Help me!" he shouted. James' brother, Ben, hurried over to help him down. As he did, Ben snapped at Owen. "You need to be more careful." Owen looked very embarrassed. "Sorry," he said quietly. "It was an accident." He slithered over to the bench and coiled up all alone. Sophie saw it all from across the yard. She was playing hopscotch with Hattie, Liddy, and Willie. "Hey," Sophie said to them, "should we ask Owen to play?" Willie shrugged but said nothing. Lily didn't seem so sure. Can snakes even hop? She asked. Hattie patted Sophie on the back. I think it's a good idea, she said, but I'm afraid to ask him. You ask him. Sophie took a deep breath. She started walking over to the bench. Then Owen looked up and saw her coming. Sophie lost her nerve and turned around. Silly Sophie, she scolded herself. Why are you so nervous? She tried to work up the courage to try again, but before she could, recess was over and it was time to go back inside. After school, Sophie and Winston got ready to walk home together. So what did you think of school? Sophie asked her brother as they walked out the door. Winston replied excitedly, It's so fun. I get to sit next to James. I get my very own desk. I like Mrs. Wise. So Winston went on, but Sophie didn't hear the rest. Outside the schoolhouse, she saw Owen being greeted by another snake, probably his mom. Sophie imagined that Owen's mom was asking Owen about his day at school, and Owen did not look happy at all. Aww. Shall we go on to chapter 5? I'm hearing yes, yes. Okay, chapter 5, Snake Stories. At dinner that night, Winston told Mr. and Mrs. Mouse about the new student. Wow, a snake for a classmate, Mrs. Mouse explained. Sophie nodded. Malcolm said that snakes can be very sneaky, she began. And Ben said they're scary, Winston added. And quick-tempered, said Sophie. And quick-tempered, said Sophie. At least that's what Piper told us. Mrs. Mouse seemed surprised at their words as she passed the cheese biscuits. Actually, she said calmly, I was going to say, a snake for a classmate? How delightful. Delightful, Sophie and Winston cried in surprise. Mr. Mouse nodded. Have you or any of your friends ever met a snake before, he asked. Sophie and Winston shook their heads. Mrs. Mouse smiled. Well, I have, he said. Mr. Mouse. Your mother and I used to know a very nice snake. Yes, agreed Mrs. Mouse, and I thought you two knew better than to make up your mind before you even get to know someone. All of a sudden, Sophie's biscuit didn't taste so good. She thought again about Owen sitting alone at recess and how sad he looked after school. Now she really, really wished she had asked Owen to play. Later that evening, Sophie went to find her dad. George Mouse was at his design desk working on a blueprint for a shrew family's new house. Dad, Sophie said. Would you tell me more about the snake you and Mom knew? Excuse me. Mr. Mouse put down his pencil. He turned to look at Sophie, smiled, and ruffled the fur on her head. Her name was Olivia, he began. Her family lived near here when your mom and I were young. We'd play all the time together, especially over in the buttercup patch. Then, one day, when I was maybe 10, she and her family moved away. I missed her a lot. Your mom did too. Sophie was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Sounds like she was a very good friend of yours. Mr. Mouse nodded. She was a very good friend. Sophie shuffled into her room. She got into her pajamas, climbed into her bed, pulled up her quilt made of milkweed fluff, and turned off the light. As she lay in the dark, Sophie made a decision. Owen was brave enough to walk into a school full of strangers, she thought. Tomorrow I can be brave enough to ask him to play. And we will stop here. And next time we'll pick up on chapter 6. Time flies when you're having fun. I hope you enjoyed chapters 3, 4, and 5. And guess who else was listening? Our little reading mascot. We need a name for him, though. Any suggestions, Kinley and Rylan? Talk to you later, girls. Love you.